Hey everyone, today I have a complete real-world review of the Tamron 35-150mm f2-2.8 lens. As always, I'll be taking this lens out in the field to see how it performs in the real world. I have a portrait photo shoot that we'll be doing today to test out the photo and video capabilities of this lens. So for the photos, I'm going to be shooting on the Sony a7 III, and for the videos, we'll be testing it out on the Sony a7S III. During our photo shoot, I'll be taking photos at pretty much all the focal lengths of this lens and sharing with you all the 100% cropped straight out of the camera, unedited photos so you can see the quality. We're going to start off with some autofocus tests in photo mode, and I'm going to be using the Sony a7 III for these. First, I'm starting with an autofocus test in stills mode on the widest end, which is 35mm, and you know what? I'm impressed. I found IAF with a wide focus area was incredibly fast and sticky. Sometimes IAF will lose me for a second here and there, but it did still keep the focus area on me, and then IAF will quickly find focus again. Here we are at 70mm, and as you can see, it's still performing well with the same speed and stickiness as it was at 35mm. Finally, at 150mm, you can see that this lens has solid autofocus performance the entire way through the barrel. It makes shooting portraits super easy, and I felt that while we were at our photo shoot. When we get to the video test for this lens, I'll have some more video autofocus examples for you, and we'll also test out focus breathing. But let's get to our photo shoot to see the image quality. I think we should do one sitting here as well. Lovely. This is like a full body shot. I usually find zoom lenses struggle to focus the most when taking full body portraits wide open on the widest end. So that is, of course, what I want to start with. It's really nice to see that this lens had absolutely no problems focusing at 35mm with a further away subject, and I love what these final images look like. There is a lot of clarity and sharpness. I thought it would be interesting to share a comparison with two prime 35 lenses, so I found similar looking photos I took on different days with both the Zeiss and GM35 f1.4. Even though this is a zoom lens, you can see that the quality holds up against both these prime lenses. I would say the main difference is that you don't have that dreamy factor of being able to shoot at f1.4 on this Tamron, but at f2 you can still get plenty of bokeh depending on how you use your location.
Lovely. Oh, that's pretty. Get like a little close up there. Looks really nice.
When I first took this lens out of the box, the weight surprised me as it was heavier than most lenses that I've been using lately. This Tamron 35-150 weighs 1,165 grams, which seems heavy even when you first pick it up. But honestly, I didn't even end up thinking about the weight at all when I started shooting because it felt really balanced in my hands and on my camera body. This lens also features a USB-C port, which I personally think is a great idea, so you don't have to spend more money on yet another dock if you have numerous third-party lenses from different brands. You can use the port for firmware upgrades, but also to customize the functions of the lens. This 35-150 is moisture resistant with leak resistant seals, and the USB-C port is waterproof just like on most phones nowadays.
Oh, maybe in between these two succulents. Oh, I like that with your arm up. Put it like kind of above your head even. Yeah. And can we also do one if you bring your shoulder like this way?
In this next spot, we had slightly trickier lighting to work with for autofocus as we didn't have any light bouncing back onto Michaela's face, so she is partly in the shadows. One of the reasons I don't shoot in perfect lighting the entire time at a photo shoot when I'm reviewing a lens is because gear is only as good as the worst conditions you put it through. So I need to test these things out. I need to shoot in both good and bad lighting to see what this lens can really do. And in these 100% crops, the portraits are still tack sharp on her eye. Just like the autofocus test I shared with you earlier, this is how it felt like the lens was focusing during our portrait session. It was just sticky on Michaela and it felt really fast and reliable.
And then I'll shoot like from this angle. I love how fresh that looks. Could you stand maybe here? Oh, that looks so cool. Some nice colors here.
In my opinion, this lens has great rendering for portraits. It's sharp enough that you have a lot of clarity and can see plenty of details. There are some shots where the color and detail in Michaela's eyes really stand out and it looks so beautiful. I think this Tamron 35-150 is great for skin too. There's texture, but it's not too over sharp, so it looks flattering when taking photos of people. The colors are beautiful too. Again, this location was tricky for colors as we had a lot of greens and yellows bouncing back onto her skin because of our surroundings. But the unedited, straight out of the camera photos look pretty well balanced.
Little action shot.
With this lens, you can shoot with an aperture of f2 from 35mm to about 40mm. It jumps to f2.2 at 40 to 60mm, then f2.5 at 60 to 80mm, and from 80mm onwards, the maximum aperture is f2.8. At 80mm and over, you are already going to have a lot of bokeh and background to foreground separation naturally. Just to show you how sharp this lens is, here's a comparison of the new GM 70-200 f2.8 Mark II taken at a similar focal length and lighting. While the GM, in my opinion, has more clarity in the little details, the Tamron holds its own with sharpness and image quality. But let me know what you think in the comments.
I was hoping the sun would pop out a little bit.
Yeah, but you're like,
Can you come back? Yeah, I love that with the arms up.
This is going to be such a good lens option for photographers who want a lens that can do a little bit of everything and somehow at no loss of quality or performance. I'm super happy with this lens and love what it can do. I can see this lens being used for wedding photography, portraits, travel especially. I'm kind of considering getting it for travel photography, street photography. This Tamron 35-150 is so versatile.
Oh, that looks nice. So maybe if you stand just here. Yes, sunshine.
The sun finally came out during our shoot, so I can see how this lens performs in backlit and brighter situations. There is some chromatic aberration that you can see in the brighter areas of the photo, such as her hair. I took some portraits slightly underexposed to balance the tones in the image. I also took some portraits where I exposed for Michaela's face, and here is where you can see the most amount of pink fringing in her hair. Luckily, it's not too much, so this is still easily removable with software such as Lightroom. I would say I'm so impressed with this lens that the only downside for me really is the lens flare, especially when it comes to shooting portraits. I usually like fun lens flares, but this one is blue sometimes, which I think stands out quite a bit in a photo, and I found that it would usually land right on top of my subject's face with the compositions I like to shoot as well. However, the lens was still focusing with ease on my subject during these strong backlit shots. I wasn't able to capture too many lens flares at the shoot since the sun only popped out for like a minute, but here's a collection of some photos I took on another day to show you what the lens flare looks like. By no means is this lens flare a deal breaker for me though. For comparison, the new GM 70-200 has plenty of lens flare as well. It's just something to consider if you are going to shoot lots of backlit client work, as you might spend a little more time in post. For travel or street photos, the flare could be used creatively.
Can we do one more sitting down? We just have all these convenient logs ready for us to sit, you know?
It's a very convenient place.
I think the bokeh is so gorgeous. I love what it looks like around the 50mm area of the lens the most. When you get to the longer end, the background washes out and blends out nicely, which is perfect if you want portraits with a lot of subject isolation in a busy background. Here's a little comparison with a portrait I took on the Sony GM 24-70 f2.8. You can see the Tamron is actually quite a lot sharper at this focal length, and the bokeh looks really, really similar.
So I thought it would be fun to try getting a portrait of one pose at both 35 and 150 and compare them side by side to see what the differences look like. So I'll get this first shot here at 35. And then if you just hold that pose, I'll move back and try and frame it the same.
As usual, I'm going to take photos at every focal length. So for this first set of photos, Michaela and I are going to be standing in one spot, and I'll put up all the photos side by side for you guys to look at. So now we'll do that all over again. I'll take a photo at each focal length, but this time I'll move around to frame each photo to look the same. Hey, it's me again for these autofocus tests. So not only is this a great photography lens, but it's a really solid option for videography as well. We're starting on the longest end of this lens at 150mm, and I'm using the Sony a7S III for these tests at 4K 25p. Just like stills, IAF is super sticky on my eye and the focusing is fast, even when I cover up my face and I'm walking towards and away from the camera. Next, we are at 70mm, and again, focusing is superb. It keeps up with the subject, no problems. I also want to say that I think this lens looks beautiful for video too. Just like photo, it has a stunning render and look for portraits. These were all shot in Cinetone, by the way, on the a7S III. At 35mm is where I noticed the lens to be just a little bit slower at focusing, but this is mostly due to me having to get closer to the lens for close-up shots, so I'm moving a lot more for these tests compared to the other two focal lengths. At 35mm, we are also shooting at the widest aperture of f2. Regardless of that, the focus still kept up with me pretty well during these tests. The focus breathing is super minimal at all the focal lengths, and just as a little comparison, even though I love the GM35 for photography, the focus breathing is quite significant in this lens, so this is a little side-by-side shot of both lenses at 35. Finally, Dan captured some creative video of Michaela on the a7S III in 4K 50p, so we can have some slow-mo footage to take a closer look at and see how this lens performs for video when we're actually out at a portrait photo shoot. My final thoughts is that this lens is amazing. In my opinion, it's great value for money. Even though it may seem expensive, you are getting a lot of focal length for that price. As you saw with some of my comparison photos of other lenses in this price range, such as the Zeiss and GM35 1.4 and the Sony 24-70 f2.8, this Tamron 35-150 holds up in performance, sharpness, and overall quality at a similar price point. But unlike a prime 35, it does have a huge range of focal lengths just in the one lens, and would be cheaper than getting a 24-70 and 70-200 kit. I, of course, have a high-resolution sample gallery of images taken on this lens that you can download on my blog if you want to take a closer look for yourself. I'll leave a link for it in the description. That is it for my real-world review of the Tamron 35-150 f2-2.8. Let me know what you guys think of the lens, of my review, and of the photos that we took down in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. It's very windy. I make new photos every single week. I make new videos every single week, so I will see you all next time. Bye.